It's the Sod Pod. Brought to you by Grassland Agro. The Sod Pod. Hello, and welcome to the Sod Pod. This is episode 7. We've got a very interesting episode here. We've got Siobhan Walsh, Tillage Editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. Ed and Johnny caught up with Siobhan and they had a good chat about all things tillage.
So we're delighted to be joined by Siobhan Walsh, Tillage Editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. Siobhan, I suppose thanks very much for coming on, number one. We really wanted to get you on because I suppose it's very, very tricky there at the moment in every farming enterprise, but especially on a tillage farm, it's a real challenge. I suppose we talked earlier on in the time about maybe, the January, February period. We knew there wasn't many winter crops in. You laid it out brilliantly at the tillage conference as well, but we were saying maybe winter wheat could be sown up to Valentine's Day. That went out the window because ground conditions didn't improve. But there was a lot of mixed crops, winter crops at the tillage conference and people reporting on them. How are those crops now, or what way are they? Have they improved, or are they still average or fair, or have farmers got back in and patched in any bits?
Yeah, hi John. Thanks for having me on. Love the show.
Hey, Ray Foley.
So look, those winter crops, John. Look, some of them have improved, and I want to be optimistic here because they have. They've,
Yeah.
The warm weather has come and they've jumped out of it a bit. But the patches haven't gone away. The patches mightn't look as bad. If you're driving along the road and you're looking into a field where there was patches, the crop around it has got a bit taller, and the patches probably don't look as bad to you. But if you're out walking those fields, the patches are still very much there, and there's no way to get around them. The good thing is the department came out and said, look, if your field is full of little small patches, you don't need to go out and re-sow it. So that's a plus. Because that would have been even worse for the crop, going out and driving on a crop. Some farmers have taken the decision to replant, and look, that's their own decision. We did up figures in the journal. I think it was back in, when was it? It was in February actually, and we had winter wheat that didn't establish. We had 12 hectares in it, just as an example. We did it on an average farm basis, and that crop was losing minus over €5,000 that farmer was going to lose on the 12 hectares. So you really have to consider re-sowing your crop, because especially at this time of the year, so we're in April now, so you're not going to get a 3-ton crop of spring barley. Most likely you're not going to get a 3-ton crop of spring barley to replace that crop that didn't establish. So the risks are high and the losses are massive, John. So I'd really be cautious about sowing. But overall, look, there are good winter crops out there. There are bad winter crops out there. And there's a lot of mediocre crops. And the important thing now is to manage them appropriately where you can. But it's very hard to manage crops at the minute. Fertilizer timings, people were not able to get out with compound earlier on in the season. Winter crops then suffered when the compound hadn't got out. And then the second split of nitrogen, a lot of crops are due their second split of nitrogen, or should have got their second split of nitrogen and their main split in the last week or so. And those splits haven't gone out. And in fairness, some of them, if they had gone out, the nitrogen would be washed away. So it's just, what do you do in this situation? How do you make decisions on farm at all? It's just so difficult.
It is, Siobhan, you're right. And even I suppose that we were chatting earlier on in the time about some of those crops maybe getting out with that P and K would definitely help them. But to be fair, it's been so wet, you'd be worried if the nitrogen had been spread, or the P and K. I know P, once it gets into the soil, will be relatively stable, but there's just such a volume of water.
Yeah, and I suppose people are waiting all the time as well for a bit of good weather to come, and the longer it went on, crops suffered more. And you do see the crops where people just said, right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to ruin my tram lines. Those crops are looking better. And I'm always, in my management notes, I'm always like, oh, mind the tram lines now, you'll be looking at them for the rest of the year. But this year, don't mind the tram lines. As long as you're not going to sink in the field, you need to get out and feed your crops, or you won't have a crop there to feed. And there's other things then, like all the trace elements and that. It's been very hard to get out to spray. There's an awful lot of winter crops. Let's say there are crops haven't got fertilizer or aren't up to date on their fertilizer, but spraying is a whole other thing. So there's a lot of crops out there haven't got their herbicide and are due a disease spray around now and haven't got that. So trace elements haven't gone out then either. Crops that need magnesium and manganese and all these things they're all suffering now as well. There's plenty of wet weather for disease, and that combined with the lack of nutrition is, that's going to cause more disease again. I was trying to be optimistic, and now I've just gone down a rabbit hole of pessimism. But it just shows you how difficult it is for farmers to manage crops at the minute.
Yeah, it's not simple. Like, it's putting stress on the crops, and it's also putting stress on the farmers. It's a very, very, very difficult time. But look, sure, as you say, unfortunately, there's not a huge amount we can do to change the weather. And look, we're probably off the back of another wet week at the moment. And like we're coming up to the 12th of April now at this point. Even when we're looking at spring crops, Siobhan, like at this point we're probably getting a little bit late for spring wheat. We're probably on the borderline for beans and we're looking at spring oats as well. Like in your opinion, when you are looking at what alternatives you have or what options you have now in terms of cropping for spring, like what are we looking at this point?
Yeah, look, it is getting to the end of all these crops. It's getting to the risky stage. But there's no crops planted. There's basically no crops planted. We estimated last week there 2% was planted of spring crops across 2%. The country. So what do you do? Like, do you just say, well, I'm not going to sow any crops? So we'll have about 130,000 hectares of spring barley. That's if we haven't lost land. So, the industry is estimating we've lost 20 to 35,000 hectares of land. So these figures are kind of their estimates. So if we've we're at our limit on spring barley at 130,000 hectares. I would still be trying to plant my spring oats, because most likely if you're planting spring oats, it's a premium crop. It's gluten free. It might be for flavins. It could be for equine. So you're going to get paid a little bit of a bonus on it. It is getting late for spring wheat. Wouldn't be a fan of getting the spring wheat in. Beans, like, I think just makes sense. Like beans, there is a payment there. I know it's getting late, and I'm getting calls from farmers the whole time. Oh, what do you think? Should I plant my beans? But I think you should. We might get to that later on again. There is a payment there, and it makes sense to sow them. But we need to look at crops like maize and beet. Now, we're probably not going to see a big increase in the area beet, because people need the equipment and everything to do it, and we're limited on that. And you need expertise as well to grow beet. It's not an easy crop to grow, to get your weeds and everything right. But there probably is potential there to increase the area maize. There is a fodder shortage at the minute, and this might be the time where people are thinking, I'll contact a tillage farmer now and grow and get them to grow a crop of maize. But there's risks in that too, and there's a worry on the livestock farmer side and on the tillage farmer side. Like, I would be very wary about planting a crop of maize for a livestock farmer at the minute if I hadn't a strong agreement in place and I hadn't money on the table. Like, would you think that's a fear out there among tillage and livestock farmers? Do you think growing fodder crops is a good option?
Yeah, I think there's so many. It was at the tillage conference as well. So the synergies between tillage and dairy, from slurry point of view, from feed security point of view, are massive. We haven't as of yet seen it develop properly, and like my thoughts on this, Siobhan, is that it has to be farmer driven. It can't be me, you, Ed, or Chaiga's talking about it. We have to get, empower farmers that they have a proper, contract that's easily accessible. Number one is a starting point, and it's just simple to fill out, like a land lease now, or a contract rearing agreement or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're on the shelf and you plug and play. But I think you're right. I think communication is probably a massive thing, because some livestock farmers feel maybe, oh, I got salted on straw or whatever, but like that's most of the income on a tillage farm. Like, we're doing it up there. If you broke even at best on a spring crop, it could be the straw that would make you your money, really, Siobhan, which is bonkers, like, isn't it?
It's just the straw that breaks the camel's back.
There's your headline now. There's your
I know you
headline.
love puns. But yeah, no, and we're looking into a year where there's going to be less straw again. You know, we're looking at a year where we've less winter crops in again. So we've 35,000 hectares less winter crops. And in the last 2 years, we're actually down 50,000 hectares of winter crops. And you take a winter barley crop, you could get 14, 15 bales of straw to the acre compared to a spring barley crop where you're probably at 9. And if we're planting late, we're going down under that. We're going to 6 and 7. And, you know, last year we saw where people had 3 and 4 bales to the acre. So hopefully we're not in that situation. But yeah, people need to, I thought it was terrible this year to see straw being imported into the country. And I know there was different reasons for that happening. Like, you know, there was a straw shortage, but there was opportunities there where straw was chopped and it didn't have to be chopped. You know, tillage farmers won't chop straw if they think they have a market for it. I think there is more going on. Maybe you've your ear to the ground there as well. Like, do you hear more of livestock farmers approaching tillage farmers now to say, look, I'm going to want 50 bales of straw come harvest time? I think there is more of that starting to go on.
It's definitely starting. It's definitely starting. It probably communication probably needs to get a little bit better, and forward planning probably needs to get a little bit better. But like, I think John hit the nail on the head there. Like, it's something that needs to be discussed, and we're starting to see great communication between, you know, our beef farmers and our dairy farmers in terms of selecting bulls coming off the dairy herds and that end of it. And I think the same thing really needs to happen on between the likes of the dairy farmers and the tillage farmers in terms of reaching agreements on straw and that end of it. Like, I think we're all in one industry, like, and communication can only be a positive thing and forward planning. Like, you know, it's positive for the dairy farmer, but it's also positive for the tillage farmer because it allows him to kind of plan his year around, and he knows where his markets are come the end of the year, like, you know.
Or her, Ed, or her.
Or her. Sorry. Jesus.
You're all right.
I get myself into a. I dig myself a hole there.
I didn't want to have to bring the yellow card after this now.
I apologise, Siobhan. I'll have to go back and edit that out now at the end of this. Apologise.
Those contracts are on the shelf. Like, Chagas have a contract there, and you know, they're like, God, there's so many.
Is it for maize, Siobhan? Yeah.
It's for maize. Yeah, it's for maize. Sorry, we don't have a straw one. But like, I mean, even just go down to your neighbour, right? If I give you the straw, will you give me back the manure? Can I have some of your farm-yard manure? And because it's all better for soil health, like, you know, at the end of the day, we're trying to improve our farming system, and if we're going to improve it, we're all very specialised now, but we need to go back to the old way of farming, which is mixed farming. So we need to do it we need to do it now within the industry rather than within the farm.
Exactly.
But that's we're probably a victim of the scales of our farms, like, you know, like in when you look at the continent or whatever, or, you know, even England, like, there'll be a lot more mixed farming, but like you're listening to lads, they have 3,000-4,000 hectares, like, you know, whereas any farmer, like, we probably know the names of a lot of farmers who are farming over 1,000 acres of grain in Ireland, like, you know. So I think you're right, though. I think I often quote you, Siobhan, but like, the straw incorporation measure is massively beneficial for soil health, and it's probably a lot of the Irish work has been done by yourself, or definitely started by yourself and then developed by other people. But like, in reality, chopping the straw, it's a longer term gain. Whereas if you can get dung, you probably accelerate that process a little bit as well. Is that a fair summation, maybe, of the potentials for soil health improvements?
Yeah, it probably is. I don't have the figures in front of me now on the carbon. Like, you are going to put less carbon back into the ground with dung than you are with straw. If you put straw straight back in, you're going to that's going to have more carbon storage in the ground. Like, is it 300 kgs or something? I don't know. There's different figures there for the
different types of straws and yields.
Yeah. But I suppose, you're right. Straw incorporation is a process. So people who have started to do it in the last 2 years, I would say to them, you know, don't give up now. If you incorporate your straw in the first year, so if you walk across your field, you're going to see loads of earthworm holes across the field. They're pulling the straw down from the top of the soil and they're bringing it down and breaking it down and making your soil really healthy and aerating and all those good things. But you will see, like you said, John, we did trials in Lyons Estate in UCD on straw incorporation, and it was 3 years of straw incorporation. And I was in the third year of those trials. And even in the third year, we did see issues with establishment. But that was where a really high rate of straw was applied now, which we could have if you had an oats crop chopped. You probably have a really high rate. But we were applying the straw in the springtime as well. So it wasn't a normal situation. So it should have been, if you're applying it in the autumn time, it's going to be well broken down by the time you get to plant a crop in the springtime. But so there was issues with establishment. And then as the crop gets up, you might see an odd bit of phytotoxicity where there's a patch where the crop hasn't established very well, or it's suffering a little bit just from all the stuff that's coming out of the straw. But over time, your straw is going to become, your soil is going to become a lot healthier. And I would say, people say, and if you look at the Green Book or whatever, it's going to say, if you apply, or if you didn't remove your straw, reduce your K by this much. Like, you can't do that in the first or second year. Your soil isn't going to be working properly, and there is an issue. Then you just have to have your carbon to nitrogen ratio working well. So your nitrogen could get locked up as well if there's too much straw going out. But as the years go on, your soil starts to work better, and all those issues start to go away.
It's definitely something that farmers are starting to take or pay a little bit more attention to, soil health in general now at the moment, especially with all the pressure that's on water quality and that end of it around the place. So I think that the straw incorporation measure is definitely important, and
it's probably one of the most successful schemes there's been there. Like, we're exceeding our climate action plan targets and everything. And the good thing is the majority of the straw that's in it, is oilseed rape and oaten straw. So it's not taken from the livestock market. No. And a lot of the straw that was chopped last year, was probably straw that was going to be hard to get anyway.
It was
wet and all that stuff. And in fairness, it is good to keep the floor in the market. And if you're a tillage farmer in Wexford this year and your spring barley is going to be sowed late, you're not going to have a good crop of spring barley, and you have a long way to go to get your straw sold. Like, it makes sense for those farmers to start to work on their soil health.
Siobhan, a couple of things there, and it's tied into the soil health. So controversial, I suppose, given the year that's in it. But I suppose we talk about straw, we talk about returning carbon to improve soil health. The other one we talk about is cultivation. And I suppose, it has been very, very tricky. Anecdotally, a lot of people are saying that plough-based winter crops are maybe slightly better. Is that fair or unfair comment, given this such peculiar weather conditions?
It's a bit mixed, because a lot of some of the direct drill and mintill would have been sown very early.
Yes.
So some of those crops did establish well. But that survey from Chagas would have showed that the crop sown at the same time as the crop sown via mintill at the same time as the ones that were ploughed, so in October, aren't really doing as well as the ploughed ones. Yeah. And just, I suppose crops that are being planted at the minute, I saw a few people moving on Tuesday now this week, or Tuesday last week, sorry. And they were going out with the plough and sowing straight behind it. I was out with another man and he was sowing beans with a Claydon drill. It was on drier land. He was able to go. Conditions weren't totally perfect, but they were good enough. But speed is going to be a thing as well. So, it's very wet at the minute. And if you're going out ploughing, if you were going out ploughing last Tuesday, you were going to be going with the plough. It wasn't dry enough to go mintill. But as the season goes on, and look, the land will dry out. And as it starts to dry out, mintill will offer a huge advantage in getting through work quickly.
Siobhan, just while we have it, we'll give him a shout out now about Ollie Blogs with his quad track and Claydon. Can you answer as a percent how likely you think those crops will be to establish? 50-50, 60-40?
No comment.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope he gets on well with him anyways, but
I think that defeats the purpose of it, Laden, does
it? Well, maybe, yeah. No, it's brilliant. So I suppose some of the key messages are that the communication, there is potential collaboration, but communication is going to be key. Even the straw one is we created a job there for someone else to do up a contract for that. It won't be me or you anyways, or Ed, so we're safe enough. But it's probably lays it down. Probably could be. The more I'm thinking about it, I think it mightn't be a bad idea because it gives security to everyone, and like it's creating a lot of issues on farm. It's going to create knock-on issues. There's one thing, I meant to ask you. This is a bit of an off-topic, and this is a bit long way down the line when we're worrying about trying to start this year. But if we say
it better not be anything to do with Clare hurling anyway.
Oh no, so we've the League One now. We've the League One already, so it's grand. But
we won the football league too, John.
the spring seed availability next year, do you think that will be impacted by, I suppose, the challenging conditions we have now, or do you think it'll be all right because the area of spring barley has grown significantly or is projected to grow significantly, or will the later sowing date have an impact on the viability of that seed, or should it be all the finest?
That's a tough one. Like, we could sow at the end of April and crops could yield fairly well.
Yes. Yeah.
And quality could be good. We just don't know what the weather will be. Yeah. If we've a drought in there, that's going to put quality down. We don't know what weather at harvest is going to be a big factor in getting seed as well. So there's loads of things there that could impact that. I would say winter cereal seed, that's a bit of an issue at the minute because you have to, what condition are those seed crops in? How many of them got in? And what will they be like now? Are they thin? Are they poor at the minute? So winter seed could be a problem, and spring seed, who knows?
Yeah. Oh, we've enough challenges, but thanks for
just to be like, we could still have good crops. Like, just people are very down at the minute, and with good reason they're down. But things mightn't be as bad as they seem.
And Siobhan, I know this is a kind of a risky one, but people need to be talking to each other, and even the discussion groups, you'd be saying, what's the point of going and chatting to each other and we've nothing done, or but it's very, very important to stay close to your agronomist. Everyone's under pressure in the industry, to be fair, and everyone's in the same boat, and it's not that you celebrate that someone is worse off or as badly off as you, but there's nothing anyone can do about it. There's no fault of anyone either, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's out of your control. You'll do the best you can when the weather arrives, and most importantly, when the weather arrives, stay safe. It's like you're going to have a lot of work to do. Yep. Don't put yourself under too much pressure. Be patient. Take your time doing things. Get enough sleep. Eat well, because there are risks when all this work comes on. And at the end of the day, I know this is people's livelihood and they need to get their crops in the ground, but there's awful things going on in the world. And the most important thing that happens is that everyone comes home safe at the end of every day.
Exactly. If lads take anything from this, that's a great point to make there, really. But look, I think even everyone's going to have shared problems, and chatting to each other is going to help people overcome those issues, finding something that works better in different ground, different soil types, different weather conditions for someone else might actually help another farmer. So look, stay safe and stay talking. I think that's they're two great points.
What's in the news?
So for what's in the news this week, again, this is the second time this has actually happened. We actually have the author of the article on with us, so we're moving up in the world, Siobhan. But the title that we've selected, and we had this one identified in advance, is April Beans, to sow or not to sow. And I suppose very timely. We've covered it. The spring cropping decisions are tricky, but you've an awful lot of work put into maybe looking at the potential viability of beans, because it is coming a little bit late.
Yeah, so we mentioned it earlier on. Everyone's asking, should I plant my beans? It's the big question on tillage farmers' minds. And it is risky. So as we go on now, April sown beans, those beans, when they start to flower, the big risk is it going to get dry when they start to flower. If it starts to get dry and the flowers die early, we're going to have less pods on those beans. That's a big if. And then the other thing is, when will we be harvesting them? Will we be harvesting them in October? And last year, people struggled to get their beans harvested. Some of them were harvesting them in the wet, but a lot of people managed to get them harvested. So they're the two big things. But you can reduce your fungicide spend. We don't apply any fungicide or apply one light fungicide.
That's mainly domain disease, is it?
Yeah, so we need to cut them things out. And then we have our protein payment, and that's the big thing. So yes. That's the insurance. So I've estimated at the minute, if the protein payment goes around if it's around €412 per hectare. So that means the protein area would have stayed at the same area as this year. That brings it to €412 per hectare. Then let's say, we'll go pessimistic. We'll say we got 1.5 tonne per acre, 3.75 tonnes a hectare of beans. Yeah. Now maybe, look, if the drought came, it could be lower than that, but it could well be higher than that. Then you have a price there. There's minimum prices at the minute of €250 per tonne. So you bring that, the income from your crop yield. This is all on this week's paper now. So if people want to look back at it, they can. Yeah. You're in around €940 a hectare. Cost of production with a half of a fungicide spend, you're just over €1,000. So your income minus your costs, your total income, that is, with the protein payment, you're going to make a profit of just over €330 per hectare. So beans, from that point of view, are making sense. Now, the yield could be lower, the yield could be higher. There's loads of different factors in there. Your costs could be lower. You could be sowing them yourself. There are contractor costs that are in it. But in my head, that looks attractive.
Yeah. And you are getting an awful lot of positive benefits for your rotation as well, and soil health.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the key thing, John, as well. We don't want to ruin our rotation. Just because it's a bad year this year, are we going to leave out that good break crop? Because that break crop is going to add to the yield of our following crop. It's going to improve our soil health. The roots are going to get down and get air and water into the soil. Well, not that it needs water at the minute, but bad choice of words. And as well, herbicide. So if you have problem weeds on the farm, you're getting that herbicide on that's a different chemistry to control some of those weeds.
Yeah, and we've seen on real light ground like that, during a dry summer, you'd still your yield estimation isn't over the top, is what I'm saying. It's not like you're asking for, you're not putting it on the upper end. You're being conservative there, in my opinion. So it looks like a very good one. Siobhan, last one there quickly is that, the sustainability credentials of beans are very important, but there's also potential for combi cropping or mixed cropping to maybe produce more indigenous protein. Will you just tell us maybe some of the options there on that?
Yeah, so you're looking at a mix, and you can get your own mix made up, to suit yourself. So a lot of people just go with barley and peas because it's easy, but you can do whatever you want. You can have oats in the mix, as long as it's a 50-50 split. And then because it's a 50-50 split, you're getting 50% of the protein payment. So where the protein payment is $4.12 for a crop of beans, it's going to be $2.06 for a crop of protein cereal mix. And a lot of people, some people will whole crop that. They'll put it in a pit or they'll bale it. But other people will actually keep that to harvest. And some people will separate it. And others will just feed as is and, get it rolled or whatever after harvest time. And it works on some people's farms. A lot of organic people probably do it. But last year I saw a lot of conventional farmers doing that on their farm. And the area went up last year. It was like 1,700 hectares or something. I think it went up 700 or 800 hectares.
Yeah. That could be a great option, couldn't it? Considering it's late and you have different options then depending on, you could whole crop it or you can leave it run on or whatever.
Yeah, there's a few different options there. So it's definitely a good option, and one that livestock farmers or tillage farmers should look at. Red clover as well is there too. Maybe there's an opportunity for tillage farmers to grow a bit of red clover for people. Just watch the kale, Yeah,
I see Gerald Potterton's at that in the journal as well. He's a great contributor, to be fair.
Funny man.
Yeah, he's a good character, to be fair. So, Siobhan, before we finish, you do the Tillage podcast every
Every Thursday, John, 4:00
Yeah.
on a Thursday. Good man, get a plug in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So John
you're
John
good to us
has
on the
made
Sod
an
Pod as
appearance
well,
himself every now and again on the Tillage podcast. So yeah, keep the Tillage flag flying.
Yeah, it was great to have the shoe on the other foot. Normally when I come on the Tillage podcast, I get asked about the price of fertilizer. So usually at a very,
Price of
very
fertilizer,
risky,
John.
very risky time, like just as some major international event is happening. But no, thanks a million, Siobhan. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much for coming on. I think there's some brilliant advice there for everyone, and we'll hopefully get you back on during the year as well.
Thanks, lads.
Cheers, Siobhan.
A big thank you to Siobhan there for coming on. You can see a lot of Siobhan's articles in the Irish Farmers Journal, and obviously every Thursday the Tillage podcast on the Irish Farmers Journal podcast channel. We can catch up with Siobhan and she talks all things tillage. Mind yourselves out there. Farm smart, farm safe. Hey, thanks for listening to the Sod Pod. We hope you enjoyed it. To find out more, head over to www.grasslandagro.ie or check out our social channels: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn and YouTube. That's all for this episode. See you next time.